The Atlantic Ocean, January 31, 1999, just past 23:30 Universal Time. In a small, dimly lit radio room, an operator sits before his console. The air hums with the faint static of the 500 kHz frequency, the channel for maritime distress for nearly a century. His hand rests on a telegraph key, a piece of brass and steel that feels like an extension of his own nervous system. For decades, the intricate rhythm tapped out by his fingers was the only lifeline for ships in peril. But tonight, he is not listening for an SOS. He is listening for silence, because at midnight, by international decree, his skill will become obsolete. He is a master of a language about to be legally erased from the seas, and he does not yet know what the final word will be. On May 24, 1844, Samuel F. B. Morse sent the first public telegraph message from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore. The message was, "What hath God wrought?" It was a question filled with awe at a new kind of connection, a way for human thought to travel faster than any human ever could. For the next 150 years, that language of dots and dashes would build nations, run railroads, report wars, and most critically, save lives at sea. The rhythmic pulse of Morse code became the heartbeat of global communication. The official record of why that heartbeat stopped is clear, logical, and rooted in safety. By the late 20th century, a new system was ready, the Global Maritime Distress and Safety System, or GMDSS. It was an automated, satellite-based network. Instead of a skilled operator deciphering a faint signal through crackling static, a sailor on a sinking ship could press a single red button. A digital distress signal containing the ship's identity would be relayed via satellite. The International Maritime Organization, or IMO, the UN agency overseeing shipping, mandated the switch. The logic was undeniable. GMDSS was faster, more reliable, and had a global reach that the old 500 kHz frequency could never match. It promised to remove human error and the limitations of atmospheric conditions. The date for the final switchover was set. At 00:00 UTC on February 1, 1999, the mandatory use of Morse code for distress signals on large commercial ships would officially end. Progress is often presented as a clean replacement. A better technology simply supplants an older one. This narrative explains how maritime safety entered the modern age, reflecting a global commitment to using the best tools available. It acknowledges the end of an era, but frames it as a necessary step forward. Here is where the official record does something predictable. It narrows. It focuses on the technical superiority of the new system, but it doesn't and cannot quantify what was lost. If you follow the thread of what was actually happening on the airwaves in those final hours, you find a story not of technology, but of people. The skill of sending Morse code was known as an operator's fist. Like handwriting, each operator's fist was unique. A seasoned radio officer could identify a friend hundreds of miles away not by their call sign, but by the specific cadence, the rhythm, the almost imperceptible pauses in their sending. It was a human signature impressed upon an electrical signal. This was the element the GMDSS, for all its efficiency, could not replicate. The automated system was a sterile digital burst. Morse code was a conversation. An operator in a storm wasn't just receiving an SOS. They were hearing the fist of another human being, hearing the rising panic or the steadfast professionalism in the timing of the dots and dashes. They were connected, person to person, across a churning sea. So as the deadline approached, operators around the world knew they were not just being replaced. A part of their identity, a skill honed over a lifetime, was being retired by international law. They faced a choice: go silent or send one last message. The convergence of final messages sent on January 31, 1999, reveals a global, shared moment of professional mourning. In Australia, the Telstra Maritime station sent its own final sign-off. From a station in Halifax, Nova Scotia, the operator's last transmission was simply CL, the procedural sign-off for closing. Pragmatic, professional. But the most famous, most poignant last message came from the French coast. At the station Le Conquet Radio, Colson FFU in Brittany, the operators prepared their final transmission. This station had been a guardian of one of the world's busiest and most dangerous shipping lanes for decades. As the final minutes ticked away, they keyed their transmitter and sent a message not to one ship, but to everyone and to no one. The message was in French. Appel à tous, c'est notre dernier cri avant notre silence eternal. The translation, calling all, this is our last cry before our eternal silence. It was not a technical sign-off. It was poetry, a eulogy for their own profession broadcast into the ether. After the message, the station fell silent. Then, silence. This dramatic, coordinated end of an era at sea had a quieter parallel on land. The decline of the railroad telegrapher was not a single event, but a slow attrition that had been happening for decades. One of the last Union Railroad telegraphers in the United States was a man named Burton H. Burt Dents. He worked for the Southern Pacific Railroad. His world was not the open ocean, but the lonely depot, his telegraph key the nerve center of a vast network of steel rails. Where the maritime operators had a global deadline, Dents's profession faded line by line, bridge by bridge, as teletype and then computer systems took over. His final assignment, as recorded by railroad historical societies, was at the Willamette River Railroad Bridge in Portland, Oregon. He retired from that post in 1993, 6 years before the eternal silence at sea. There was no grand, poetic last message from Burt Dents. There was just the quiet end of a final shift. The last of a breed. It's not that one operator sent SOS. It's not that another sent CL. It's that all of them, the Frenchman at FFU, the Australian at Telstra, and the American railroad man Burt Dents in his quiet depot, all faced the same obsolescence. One end was a global, scheduled event. The other was a slow, solitary fade, but they all pointed to the same conclusion. It's important to be precise about what ended. On January 27, 2006, years after the maritime silence, Western Union officially discontinued its telegram service. Many news reports framed this as the final death of the telegraph. It wasn't. By 2006, those messages weren't being tapped out in Morse by an operator. They were sent using modern internet and phone infrastructure. It was the end of a brand, not a skill. And Morse code itself is not dead. It continues to thrive as a passion for thousands of amateur radio enthusiasts around the world. For them, it is a language kept alive by choice, not by necessity. They still use the old codes: 73 for best regards, 88 for love and kisses. But something was lost at 0000 UTC on February 1, 1999. The professional role of Morse code as a life-saving language, a daily duty performed by skilled operators, was over. The 500 kHz frequency, a place on the radio dial that for 90 years was a constant hum of human activity, a channel of commerce, gossip, and desperate pleas for help, fell quiet. A door was closed, not because of neglect but by deliberate, well-intentioned design. And today, the frequency that once carried the last cry from Le Conquet Radio carries nothing. Only the faint, eternal silence of static.